footytips.com.au TV.
Welcome to footytips.com.au TV. My name's Francis Leach and I'm here with Beverly O'Connor to see if we can pick you some winners for round 13. And Bev, you're on the board of the Melbourne Footy Club. Let's start there because Friday night the Demons play the Bombers, but Neil Danaher, the coach, has decided that this year's his last year.
Absolutely. He's decided after 10 years at the helm that it's time to move on. We were going to do a very extensive review of the position, but he's decided perhaps he's had enough and that he's got as much as he can out of the boys. Interesting though, when you turn it up on Friday, I think Melbourne and all the boys that have worked with him for 10 years are going to want to show him how much that he actually means to them.
Which is bizarre when you think about how bad Melbourne were. No disrespect, last Friday night against the Tigers, they were awful. And suddenly the sentiment of the coach moving on could create an entirely different dynamic within the team. And they could be fired up for this one because if you cast your mind back 2 weeks prior against Collingwood, they were fantastic. So the capacity to play well's there.
Absolutely. You've got to remember Nietzsche's out. I'm still not sure whether he's going to play with that finger. But I think you're right. I think they will lift. I think they were embarrassed by their performance. I think they'll win. The
Bombers coming back from a loss against Port Adelaide. Great form prior to that. Can they recapture it? Maybe. But I think I've got to go with the sentiment as well. If you're going to pick an upset this round, it might be this one purely on the basis that the Demons will be playing on emotion. Other games coming up this weekend of real importance, of course. Sydney take on Geelong Skilled Stadium. It's going to be wet and cold in Victoria, which means the Swans are going to have to struggle against the Cats at home, and the top of the table Cats look very hard to beat.
They look so good, and look, they are coming off the break, and I've been interested to hear that Bomber Thompson has really given them a different type of break. You know, he hasn't overloaded them with stats and figures and what they've got to do. Pressure's off, they're running with confidence. I can't see Sydney getting over the Cats, not after the way they performed against Collingwood.
They kicked 3 goals to three-quarter time last week. Barry Hall's kicked 2 goals, I think, in 4 matches. He's struggling. He's obviously got an injury. Will they rest him? I'm not sure. They need to get more out of both the Bolton boys, Jude and Craig. Also, out of their midfield, it's really struggling at the moment.
Absolutely. And they just don't seem to have the desire any longer to go in there week in, week out and do it for the team.
This is their moment of truth for 2007, the Swans. If they win this, their season's still alive, but I just think they're hitting the Cats at the wrong time. I'm picking Geelong as well.
Geelong for me as well.
Speaking of teams who've got it right on the line, Fremantle host Carlton this week at Subiaco. And the Dockers have had a terrible run as well. The Chris Tarrant staff being beaten by the Dogs in Darwin.
Des Headland just today, again, it's just extraordinary. They seem to be a rabble at the moment and out of control.
They're at home. The Blues were flogged by the Hawks in their last outing. You don't know which Carlton's going to turn up.
And Chris Connolly, his coaching career is also on the line here at the moment. He has got to get his boys up, for this is a really important one for Fremantle to win. And I think if he, I think he'll get them up on home turf, so I'll go for Fremantle.
Major danger game. Last time they were home, the Tigers were in front of them by about 21 or 25 points at half-time in that game. The Dockers got back and won. The Blues have done okay at Subi in the last couple of years, but I think also because it's a crunch game, pick the Dockers to win this one. If they don't, Chris Conley could also be looking for a new job pretty soon. Other big games on the weekend. Brisbane host Port Adelaide. Port back in good form after their win against the Bombers.
I think you're right. And I think Brisbane have just got too many injuries at the moment. And I do think Port... Brisbane seem to be regrouping, trying to find their way. Jonathan Brown, hit and miss. So I think Port... They are finding some good form. Even though it's at the Gabba, I still think Port could beat Brisbane.
Port also have Warren Tredrea, played his 200th game last weekend, had a great game, just got the feel for the football again. Their champion full forward might be the big difference. If Brisbane don't get Jonathan Brown kicking goals, at the moment they've got no one else to go to, so that could be a real problem.
Who are you going for?
I'm going to pick Port to keep their finals hopes alive when they win.
We are in fierce agreement here tonight.
We certainly are. How are we going to go when the Crows take on the West Coast Eagles at Amy Stadium in Adelaide, though?
This is a real puzzle, this game. Again, the week about the West Coast Eagles has been dominated by Ben Cousins' nightclub activities. He just cannot get off the front pages. I'm not quite sure what he thinks he's doing, and it's a constant distraction. This is a tough team. The Crows just haven't looked the goods for me this year, and I think maybe West Coast, even though it's over there.
I think Adelaide are going to win this. I think it might be a mini crisis for West Coast. They've lost their last couple. They've lost, I think, 4 in their last 6. Chris Judd won't play again because of an abductor strain, which is a groin injury. They've only won 3 of the 6 games he hasn't played in throughout his career.
You don't think the loss to St Kilda is going to fire them up?
It might, but I don't think they're quite good enough at the moment. And I think Adelaide at home will be a very, very tough proposition. And I just think that that'll be enough for the Crows at home to beat them. So West Coast, not for me this week.
Okay, well, I'll go for a smoky and see what happens.
Another important game in the history of AFL football will be at the MCG on Sunday because Glenn Archer, one of the greatest who ever played, certainly the shinboner of the century, they call him there at Arden Street, plays his 300th game against the Western Bulldogs. 2 teams also vying for a top 8 finish.
Absolutely, and I think what we're seeing here is Danny Wells coming back, really important player for the Kangaroos. So I think that's going to make a big difference to them. Eagleton's out for the Doggies. Doggies, to me, are still hit and miss this year. I think the Kangaroos have proved themselves very hungry. They really want to demonstrate to their coach and to their team that they're a good outfit. So I think the Kangaroos.
They were beaten quite soundly by Adelaide and Carrara last time out, but I think once again these sorts of games do, particularly at clubs like the Kangaroos, mean a hell of a lot, and they will be physical and unrelenting. The Dogs will need to be at their best. I'm going to pick the Western Bulldogs because I just think that their finals campaign is about to get underway. Second half of the season will be massive. If Chris Grant gets back, it'll just shape their team a little better. So I think the Dogs in a very close one. St Kilda and Richmond, the Tigers had their first win last week.
St Kilda? Missing a few. Kaczynski's out again.
Played his best game for the season and best game for a while, and hamstring problems once again.
Absolutely. So look, I'm not 100% sure about this one. I think it could be a real danger match for St Kilda.
I think the Saints showed that they still have plenty of quality. Last week was a fantastic win in Perth, and it'll just be a test of the young Richmond midfield to see whether
Troy Simmons is back though.
Yeah, he's going to be a great contributor for the Tigers.
Yeah, and a win under their belt. I think you're going to be in for a very big test. And having had a big win over in the West, who knows what sort of effect it has coming back.
Two teams who've had great wins, so it should be a great contest. I'm going for the Saints. What a surprise there. You going for the Tigers?
I'm going to go for the Tigers, just to really throw a cat among the pigeons.
And I think they're saving probably the best game of the round till very last at 4 o'clock-ish on Sunday afternoon at the Telstra Dome. There'll be a full house there as Collingwood and Hawthorn, two of the top four sides, go head-to-head. The Magpies without Anthony Rocker, though.
But what great form they've been, and they have shown with a lot of their young guns that they probably don't necessarily need Rocker. He's always a loss though, because he's such a good go-to man. I think Hawthorn though are also in terrific form. This is going to be a terrific game. Will really show where these two teams are. I'm going to go for Hawthorn.
They've had 7 debutants so far this year, Collingwood, and they keep winning. It's quite amazing. Martin Kelly, the Irishman that played last week, only came to Australia to learn about Australian football in October of last year.
7 months ago. It's insane.
Quite extraordinary. But I'm with you. I think the Hawks, their win against Carlton was super impressive. A 100-point victory. And
their midfield is just superb at the moment.
They're so beautifully structured. Like they just play in a really disciplined way.
Old-fashioned, disciplined football.
And they've got the forward-line power. If Lance Franklin plays in particular, to worry the Pies. It'll be a great game, fitting of the occasion, we hope. But I think also these two teams are neck and neck. But I think the Hawks just have their nose in front at the moment.
Okay. So we're in agreement.
We've got that one together. We've got a few that we're...
a few out that we're trying to... I'm going to trip you up somehow.
I think you might this weekend. Good luck with the D's on Friday night.
Oh, thank you. Let's hope they do it for Dennis.
Let's hope they do. And let's hope that we've helped you pick a few winners also. Tune in next week to footytips.com.au TV to see if we can pick a few winners for you for round 14.
footytips.com.au TV.